to today's webinar, Work Comp Updates, presented by our sponsor, Heffernan. We're super happy you could join us today. My name is Michelle Wilcox, and I will be your moderator. I will also be monitoring questions you might have during the session. Before we open up the session, let's review a couple of key items. All of the webinar materials we discussed can be found at the URL currently showing on your screen. I'll be sharing this URL in a follow-up email, so don't feel like you need to write it down right now. If you have trouble with your internet connection during the webinar, we recommend leaving the presentation and logging back in. We do not control the audio, your devices control the audio. So if you have audio difficulties, try adjusting the volume settings on your device. If a telephone line goes dead during the call, hang up and call back again to the same number. If all lines go dead, watch the on-screen chat box for an alternative call-in number. Feel free to ask questions or provide feedback by using the questions box during the webinar. If you are using a tablet, you may need to tap on the screen for the options bar to appear, and then you can select the appropriate option. We may not respond immediately. We will be taking a questions and answer section at the end of the presentation. If we can't get to your comment or question during the session, we will be online afterwards to respond, or we may follow up in an email if we run completely out of time. You may also email us at moderator@aspenrmg.com for up to 48 hours after the webinar. This will be a 1-hour presentation. Questions and comments are very much encouraged, and the presenters will be answering questions at the end. Lastly, we have a number of upcoming webinars covering a variety of topics, including those listed at the Heffernan webinar website. Presenters today are Deborah Parker of Aspen Risk Management Group, Deb Beto, owner of UrOps Manager, and Jim Kerr of TriStar Group. Deborah's professional career has spanned both the carrier and brokerage sides of the business as workers' compensation specialist. She has held increasing levels of responsibility in underwriting, marketing, branch management, and in-home office operations leadership roles. She has held her role of safety and risk consultant with Aspen Risk Management for over 10 years. Deb Beto is a senior professional in human resources, SPHR, and her professional experience spans over 30 years. In 2010, she founded her company called UrOps Manager that manages the business operations of small businesses, including all of the elements of human resources. As an advisor to companies of less than 50 employees, Deb has been advising employers about workplace safety since 2010. And lastly, Jim Kerr, Vice President of Claims Operations with TriStar. Jim started as a claims adjuster for a carrier in 1986 and then joined the third-party administrator world in 1991. For the first half of his career, he filled the roles of senior examiner, supervisor, division manager, branch manager, senior VP of claims, and chief operations officer, all within the claims chain of command. In the next phase, Jim joined TriStar in sales and client services role, then a dedicated client services director before running the client services practice, managing the nationwide team of account managers. Since 2017, Jim has overseen a team of quality assurance managers and coordinates the efforts in claims operations, best practices, audits, regulatory compliance, training, workflow enhancement, and claims system development. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to you, Deborah.
Okay.
And let me know once you get it.
I don't have it yet.
I think you gave it to me.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Let me
Jim, you're late.
try this again.
Now you gave it to me. Jim and I should be muted.
But it's they're flickering. Deb, can you say something, Deborah?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. So I still don't have the start presentation mode yet.
Well, because it's moving all over the place. Okay, let me try this one. Sorry, guys.
There we go. There we go. Technology, it's always great when it works, right? So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. workers' compensation update. We're going to talk about 2025 in review and look a peek into the future. Although it says 2025, there's a lot of data that is lagged. So a lot of the data that you'll see is 2024. Just a reminder that this is not creating a client relationship between us, and that the presentation material is general in nature. And I can't thank enough for Deb Badeau and Jim Kerr to be here, because I've done this for years and years on my own solo, and there are so many wonderful questions from our audience regarding in-depth HR questions and in-depth claims questions. So I'm so happy they're here with us. We're going to talk about financial status of the industry and why do you care, important impacts on workers' compensation that's happening, and how to reduce your cost of workers' compensation in your own organization. And again, the future of things. What is it going to look like? What can you worry about? Can I give you something else to worry about? So we're going to launch a couple polling questions throughout just to get to know you better. We'd like to know if you attended a previous Heffernan webinar, yes or no. And so Michelle's going to launch these for you to vote on.
Yep, the poll has been launched, and it looks like we've got 84% say yes, and the rest say no.
Okay, we've got some veterans on the line. Awesome. And welcome new people. And also, what type of business are you in? You'll see where this makes some sense later on. We're going to talk about some industry trends.
And the options are hospitality, agriculture of construction, wholesale, retail, manufacturing, nonprofit, government, or other. And I'll give it a couple minutes, and I really appreciate everybody's participation, and we're glad to have you today. Okay, looks like we've got 36% say nonprofit, 34% say other, 15% wholesale manufacturing, 8% agriculture, and 0% hospitality.
Oh, wow. Okay, no hospitality, no hotels, no restaurants. Interesting. Okay, well, that's great to know, and I will make sure to point out some of those industries as we go along. So first, we're going to talk about the current financial state of the industry. Here's some of the state of the line highlights from, this is a resource if you want to check it out, is ncci.com. They put out a lot of great data every year. The workers' compensation net written premiums have decreased 3% in 2024. The 2024 calendar year combined ratio is 86%, which stayed level from the prior year. And it
Oh, Deborah, you cut out.
a sign of underwriting strength. Anything under 100 is considered profitable. It is the most profitable line of 3.6 annually, so that's a really good sign, and that's indicating the number of claims that are filed. However, severity grew in 2024 with increases of 6% for medical claim severity and indemnity claim severity. So that's the serious lost time injuries are increased. Fatal injuries are down 4%. 5,070 in 2024 compared to 5,283 in 2023. For all of us, that 5,070 is too many. There was a late report that came out last month that said the report largely erased the upbeat tone of the previous report. So the labor market has now returned to a precarious state of little to no job growth, raising questions about go-forward trajectory. So the recent increase in geopolitical tensions, we all know about the Iran situation, immigration situations, and so we may be back in a world of during the COVID situation where we're talking about, deliverables and labor markets. So the NCCI data for written premiums, as was mentioned in the summary, you can see workers' compensation was the only line of business that actually decreased. Now keep in mind workers' compensation is based on payroll. So if we have a reduction in workforce, we'll probably have a reduction in net written premium. So those things kind of go hand in hand. Personal auto, homeowners is included in property casualty. So whatever you're paying for your auto insurance is included in there. Here's what we showed as that 6% lost time claim severity going up. You can see the prior year increase was 3.4 and it's now at 6%. So that's a red flag. And we talked about the combined ratio in brief. Personal auto decreased from 105 to 95. So it went from unprofitable to profitable, and homeowners from 111 to 100. So I did speak with a large municipality this past week who said that their overall premiums actually came down. So maybe that's indicative of some of these more profitable years, and workers' compensation stayed static. So overall, the total P&C industry is doing better. Good news there. So you can see by component what the combined ratio is. So think about your paycheck. When you bring your paycheck home, you've got the payroll, and then you've got to pay out your mortgage or your rent and your groceries and your utilities, and oh my. Loss ratios are a big component of that. So out of the premiums that insurance companies take in, they have to pay out primarily the losses. That's the large chunk. And then the loss adjustment expenses are the cost of actually handling specific claims. Underwriting expenses are keeping the lights on. It's the lease on the building, it's the payroll, it's the desks. You know, if that exists anymore, a lot of us are remote, but you know, that's just the basic expenses of running a business. So you can see what the components are of that 86%. So the balance being paid out in dividends or profit. So where are those losses coming from? We're going to launch a poll again on what is your guess? What cause of loss do you think is happening for the most part, causing workers' compensation claims?
Options are strains, motor vehicle, slip, falls, or struck against. And again, thank you for your participation. I'm going to wait until we get about 60% that have voted before we share the results. So it looks like 54% say slips and falls, 8% say motor vehicle, 3% say strains, and 2% say struck against.
Okay, good responses. And you'll see the answer here. So Liberty Mutual puts this out, the Workplace Safety Index, every year, and their 2024 listing, they list a top 10. I'm going to share with you the top 4, but overexertion involving outside sources, just keep that in mind as being lifting objects. So warning sign, heavy loads, falls, some of you said slip and fall. That is a big one. Wet floors. And we got to add falls to that. So I would say falls is probably the leading cause. If you combine falls on the same level and falls to lower level, that's the number one. So you've got, you know, falls to lower level being a lot of it ladders, mezzanines, that type of thing. And struck by, a lot of you said struck by, unsecured tools, racks, or product falling on people. So here's that total list. You can see it's based on costs per billions, percentage-wise. And if you're curious, you want to go to the whole thing, I left you a link there to do that. So the cost of claims in your organization, the average medical indemnity portion total claim 2024 ranges from 30,000 to 45,000. So that's considered your direct cost. When you incur a claim, you know you're going to pay out medical and you know you're going to pay out lost time. That's something that is known. The indirect, or maybe perhaps a little bit of unknown gray area, is the cost of a claim. It's estimated to be 2/3 of the direct cost. So that's downtime in production. The supervisor has to investigate the loss, or maybe you have to hire temporary employees or retrain your current employees to take over someone else's job while they're out. That still costs you something. So that's, consider your cost of doing business, your profit margin on, you know, many companies is anywhere from 1% to 3%. Your cost of a $45,000 claim could cost you millions. And that may seem outrageous right now, but I'll show you in a minute that that's not so outrageous. So if you think of an iceberg, you know, this is a healthcare example. I know maybe some of you might be in healthcare in some indirect way. Direct costs that we mentioned, medical bills, paid leave for the injured employee, but underneath that iceberg are the looming indirect costs. So call out, staff turnover, burnout or poor performance. They call that presenteeism. People are there, but they're just not doing the job. Reduce quality of care for their patients and lower patient satisfaction ratings, which can cost them business, of course. So this is taken from the OSHA.gov site, and I've given you the link down here next to the disclaimer if you want to play around with this. I plugged in here a direct cost of 45,000. So the worst case scenario, it was ranging from 30 to 45. So I picked 45. And it estimates for us the estimated indirect costs. So it combines that direct and indirect cost at 94,500. And taking a company that might have a 3% profit margin, here's the amount of sales that it will take to cover those indirect costs, and the total costs, $3 million. So again, this is not me just throwing numbers out. This is a calculation that NCCI and OSHA.gov believe in. So if you're ever in a situation where you have to upsell your boss to purchase safety equipment, it might be worth saving one $45,000 loss, right? Just you may be investing 20,000 into safety to save 45,000. You're actually saving 3 million. So use this to your advantage as a supervisor. So incident rates, those are considered a lagging indicator for you as far as profitability goes of workers' compensation. The examples of lagging indicators are the number of severity of injuries and illnesses. So incident rates compares incidents to a number. You want to be compared to a same size company, in other words, for your incident rate. But don't forget the leading indicators. Those are things like participation in safety activities by your employees, the number of hazards, close calls, near misses. A lot of people forget to log those near misses. Near miss is nothing more than a severity loss that didn't happen. And the more near misses you have of that similar type, the more likelihood that you're going to have that severity loss, right? So don't forget that if you're looking at how you're performing in safety, these are things that are important to consider. And another polling question, do you know your incident rate for your company?
Yes, no, or not sure, but I have a good guess. And we'll give it a second here before I close the poll. So it looks like 34% say not sure but have a good guess, 33% say no, and 33% say yes. So I'll share that now with everybody.
Pretty equal across the board there. That's interesting. But most of you do say no, that you don't know what it is. So I'm going to help you figure that out. So some of you said you were in, I think we had some wholesale trade, construction. So if you're in any of these industries, when you figure out what your incident rate is, this is kind of old information, but you can find new information online easy enough. Compare yourself to your own industry and see how you do. Here's how you calculate it. So you're going to take your number of incidents that have occurred on site by 200,000, then divide that number by the total number of hours worked that year. So the 200,000 equates to the number of hours 100 workers would usually work within the span of 1 year. So the TRIR, which stands for total recordable incident rate, is your number of incidents times 200,000. Then you're going to divide that by the number of hours actually worked. Where do you find that information? You should have an annual report that's required to be posted from February 1 to April 30th of each year. So it should be posted somewhere in your organization, unless you're one of those 300A. It's an annual report, and that will have your number of incidents and number of hours worked. So you should be able to start there. So look for that report and see if you can calculate your incident rate. If you know you're above the industry that you're in, you have work to do. So with that, I'd love to turn it over. Deb Badeau is going to talk about HR essentials and what you need to know.
Thank you very much, Deborah, and thank you everyone for being here today. We'll just go on to the next slide and I'll let you know when we do that each time.
Okay.
Perfect. So I'm not here to bore you with legalese or any HR legalese. I'm here because workers' comp costs jumped 6 to 9% this year, and if you're not watching, it hits your bottom line really fast. And this isn't just HR stuff, it's your money. Claims for mental health, remote injuries, and even PTSD are doubling. States are cracking down on uninsured owners, business owners with very big fines, but there is good news. I can give you some small actionable things that you can do, like better training or quick reporting, that can cut your premiums and your lawsuits down. So that's the whole goal. So I'm going to just cover the big updates related to HR and why they matter to you and exactly what to do next. So let's stay on this slide and I will carry on. Okay, the first big thing, mental health isn't a soft issue. It's now the second most common disability claim right behind pregnancy. And this slide shows that these claims are up 40% since 2022. Why? Well, the answers are remote work stress, burnout, and trauma. Trauma, especially for first responders. And states like California and New York now say that PTSD from work counts as a real injury. That means that your team can file claims for anxiety or depression tied to job pressure. What this means for you is more paperwork, higher premiums, maybe lawsuits if you ignore it. But here's the fix. The earlier you do this fix, the better. What to do? Add a simple mental health policy. Let's say it should say something along the lines of, if you're struggling, talk to me or call this hotline. No judgment. You want to make sure that you let the employees know that you realize that this could be something that they should be embarrassed about, but really it's not something they should be embarrassed about. It's something that a lot of people are feeling right now, so no judgment. Number 2, train your supervisors. If someone says that they're overwhelmed, then your supervisors should be listening to them, documenting it, and then sending them to an EAP, an employment assistance program, EAP, or a doctor. And the faster they do it, the better results you'll have on your claims. And number 3 is track it, log every call or complaint. If you miss one report, then that claim can turn into a 6-figure fight. So do this today. Post a hotline number by the break room. It'll take 5 minutes. So add a policy, train your supervisors, and track it. Those are the 3 things I recommend as actionable items. Okay, Deborah, next slide. Okay, the next big issue is people working from home. We've had cases of people slipping on wet floors, sitting in bad chairs, and those count as work injuries now. Insurers see more ergonomic claims than ever, and if someone's hurt, the employer is still liable, even though it's happening in the employee's home. Why this matters? Premiums rise when claims pile up. One bad back from a wobbly desk could cost you, the employer, thousands of dollars. So here's what to do. 3 things. Number 1, send a checklist to your employees about what they should be doing ergonomic-wise. Included things like their chair height, their screen level, not having cords on the floor, things like that. Number 2, tell your staff to report anything that's unsafe and offer to fix it. The fix will be less expensive than the claim. Number 3, document it. Have your employees document or send a photo of their setup, their home office setup, along with, and then date, have them send that, and then you date it when they sent it so that there's a history of what their office looks like. And if they claim later, you prove that you warned them. So my ultimate recommendation would be to look into the services of Ergo Healthy or another similar type company, but I favor Ergo Healthy, that can prevent ergonomic injuries. But at a minimum, if you don't want to go that route, email that checklist to your employees this week about what the expectations are for their home office. That, sending that email will take 10 minutes, and make sure you do it before someone trips. Okay, next slide. Thank you. States are right now tightening up on compliance and fraud with employers. California just passed Senate Bill 847, and now they can fine uninsured business owners faster and up to an amount of $50,000. And New Jersey raised the claim threshold. New York wants their registration done by April, and if you don't have it done, they can impose fines. And fraud is huge too. Insurers are now using AI to spot fake injuries. So one slip up, you miss a deadline, you're paying penalties plus back premiums. So don't get caught in the state's regulations, ever-changing regulations. Keep up on those regulations. So what you can do today, 3 actionable items. Number 1, call your broker. Ask your broker if you're fully covered and if you have any gaps. Number 2, check your workers' comp certificates. Make sure that they're current. And number 3, keep your records organized. You need your payroll, you need your hours, you need your injuries. And if AI flags something, you want to have proof right at your fingertips. So your action item is to schedule that broker call this month. No excuses. It's your best shield at defending yourself. Okay, next slide, Deborah. Okay, here's your playbook, no fluff. Update your employee policies, add rules for home safety and mental health reporting. There are lots of free templates out online that you can tailor to your own business, but make sure that your policies are up to date. Number 2, train your team. 1 30-minute meeting with the process to spot signs, document, and escalate problems is going to save a lot of money in preventing claims. Record your meetings so that your team has something that they can go back and reference. Number 3, prevent, don't just react. Get a cheap wellness app or do a safety walkthrough. Offer telehealth. Offer an employee assistance program, otherwise known as an EAP. The cost for these costs pennies, but could save you thousands in claims. So start preventing the claims by giving your employees some resources that they can use. The place to start would be to audit your last year's claim logs. So see what's spiking and then call your broker. And I think that takes up my time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help. My goal is to keep things simple, actionable, and inexpensive so that you can run your business and not run the paperwork. So I'll turn it back over to Deborah now.
Thanks so much, Deb. Wow, those are great and easy fixes for a lot of people. So great information. Okay, so what are we looking forward to? And there was a quote I came across as I was putting this together. It says, navigating risk in 2026 is about planning for what you don't know is coming, not just what keeps you up at night right now. Boy, talk about Chicken Little. That's depressing, right? So, but we have to look at the reality is the future of the workplace has been changing over time. We have generational differences and therefore maybe some communication differences. The focus on mental health, yeah, wow, Deb hit on that really well. New talent recruitment, there's not an employer I speak to on a weekly basis that doesn't say that's the one thing that keeps them awake at night is they can't find good help. And then retaining and developing their current employees, developing efficient support systems to respond to workplace injuries and other crises. You know, other crises could be numerous in business, right? Catastrophic planning and disaster recovery. Another service that Deb didn't mention that she does, I know that she's helped people with their business continuity, but we know we have the rising frequency of weather extremes, whether that be earthquakes, tornadoes, extreme cold to heat. I mean, yesterday it was 85 here in North Carolina, today it's 40, so I can appreciate that. Immigration pressures, so labor access, there we go. AI, you know, it's a good thing. I use it a lot. Fortune 500 survey shows that companies in that group have 70% of them have an AI risk committee in place. So it is here, guys. It's not going away. Planning ahead, the world is rapidly changing, as we know. The supply chain disruptions, all of these cyber attacks. We had a cyber attack expert online not too long ago. All of these will greatly improve if you can kind of take a look ahead and plan for it as best you can. So if you want to look at these resources, I'm citing this from Sedgwick's 2026 Global Risk Study. You can look at it more in depth there. So it'll keep you up at night more. So prevention is key. If you don't have a claim, you don't have to worry about the cost, right? So here's some tips. Conduct regular self-inspection safety audits to identify and eliminate hazardous conditions. Do those walk-arounds. Make sure everybody knows how to do them. And don't forget, as Deb pointed out, we've got a lot more people working remotely at home. Make those Zoom calls with remote employees to review their workspace conditions from an ergonomic point of view. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a Zoom call and say, hey, can you point your phone over at your workstation? Let me see how you're working. Good housekeeping. So keep that floor clear of any materials that could cause a worker to slip or trip. We saw that was one of the top causes of injury. Provide employees with adequate personal protective equipment and enforce its use. I always share that example of when I once went out to a warehouse or manufacturing plant and there was a supervisor that was going to walk me through, and we went through a door that had a big posted sign, safety sign, that said eyewear required beyond this point. He wasn't wearing any and he didn't offer me any. So what kind of example was he setting as a supervisor, right? So I'm pretty sure I found a lot of employees not wearing protective equipment because the example wasn't set. Properly train all employees and train often. So newer employees are vulnerable to accident because they're new. They're not trained in their tasks necessarily for very long. But don't forget your seasoned employees. They can always use that refresher because a lot of times you walk through and like, oh, Joe, yeah, he's been here 20 years. He knows the drill. Well, you know, sometimes things get rote, you know, when you've been doing them for a while and you kind of take things for granted. So it wouldn't hurt for Joe to be refreshed on that safety course. And recycle, rinse, repeat. Can't do this stuff often enough. When a claim does happen, however, you want to control those costs as best you can. So you want to investigate and report injuries quickly. Injured worker to the supervisor. Do they know how to report a claim? Does your frontline employee know how to report to their supervisor? You know, to whom do they report? To the supervisor, supervisor to HR or whomever, and HR to the insurance company. There's that whole chain of events that has to happen rather quickly to control that cost. Get immediate and appropriate medical attention. Use your NPNs. Those medical facilities know workers' comp. They know how to check in with you as an employer, understand the employee's job duties and tasks that they normally do in a work day, and they can compare that to their medical restrictions and better communicate with you on getting that person back to work in the right way. Communication with the injured person, insurance carrier, and medical. Communication is key. Have a strong return to work program. So know that modified duty ahead of time. Maybe look around your organization and pick out tasks that can be done. Maybe even doing that safety survey. You know, have that person, if they can't lift boxes or do inventory in their normal job, have them walk around and kind of take pictures and document the hazard that they see. So some best practices. I think number one on that list on the prior slide was reporting quickly. And you'll see here's old information, but if we looked at the current information, it's pretty much the same. You go 18% within 2 weeks of the injury, they're more expensive. Within 3 weeks, they're 29% more expensive, on and on, up to almost half reported at 4 weeks or 5 weeks. So, you know, they're more likely, I think it's the, you know, first time claim is like 13% of those become litigated. If they're delayed reporting, it's more like 53% of them are litigated. And the more litigated, the less communication happens and the less control you have over that claim. So here's an example of maybe a claim gone wrong. So here's a text communication. Hey, I can't come in today. My back is killing me. I think I'm going to try to see a doc. And I think this is either sent to her supervisor or HR. And she says, oh, geez, I know what back pain is like. I'm sorry to hear it. Let me know how it goes. And she texted back. The employee says, hey, again, the doctor is sending me to PT and says I can't work for 4 weeks. So what's your thought on this communication? Do you feel like this should be filed as a work comp or a health insurance claim? We're going to launch that poll. You can tell us what you think.
It's been launched. And we do have a lot of questions. So if I just want to let everybody know, if we run completely out of time, I will be sending the questions to the presenters for their responses. So if we don't, I'll try to get through as many as we can, but I just want to put that out there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it. It looks like 66% say not sure, not enough details, 27 or 22% say health insurance, and 12 say workers' comp.
Okay, and that's very telling. So we've got the employer who knows the employee has a long history of back problems and calling off work. So she's done this in the past. So she's assuming this is just another of that same issue with that pre-existing back problem. Thinks they're being great and empathetic and understanding by not asking questions. You know, you got to watch the privacy thing. Employee contacts the employer 2 weeks later and asks when they will get paid. The employer is confused, explains the employee doesn't have any PTO remaining. The employee states they should be paid since this is a work injury. So this is 2 weeks later after the initial quote unquote report, and now the doctor's talking about surgery. The employer's upset, doesn't report the injury until they receive a letter of representation from an attorney and demands the claim be denied. Talking to a claims adjuster, they want to make it clear to all employers and supervisors that this is common. It happens all the time. Don't ever assume the cause of your employee's complaint. Always ask. In most jurisdictions, it'd be darn near impossible to not deny the claim. Don't be afraid of creating claims. A lot of times I talk with employers and it's almost like they don't want to talk about fraud. They don't want to talk about reporting and they don't want to talk about it. It's like, if you don't talk about it, it won't happen. This claims adjuster says that the claims create themselves if you avoid the details. So the best thing you can do is get all those facts up front, report the incident anyway to your work comp insurance. It doesn't necessarily mean that because you report it, it's going to be paid. I mean, if you give enough information up front and say, hey, I don't think this is work related and this is why, you know, you've got something to stand on, but it's getting done quickly, right? So speaking of claims, Jim Kerr, take it away.
Howdy, y'all. Yeah, I kind of gathered a few things. I do get a lot of information kind of from the industry on trends and different items that are happening. So I grabbed a few things that I thought might be interesting. So if you want to jump slides here.
tell
Recently
me
there was
when.
yeah, that was perfect. The Division of Workers' Comp, the DWC, had an audit, a seminar, and they talked about their audits. And this is what the state audits claims administrators for. They do a annual performance audit. It's called PAR, and they look at, did you pay the right benefits? Did you pay it timely? You know, did you get your first payment of permanent disability or death benefits paid? And then they look at subsequent indemnity payments. And did you notify the injured worker of their rights to have a qualified medical exam? And this is the basic model of what they look at. If you can change for me here, Deb. What they found, they kind of reported what they thought the biggest problem was, and most of it had to do with documentation of wages. And they gave this, you know, analysis of what they see when they look at, you know, employers' documentation that's then fed to the claims administration, you know, administrators, and then those folks, you know, are calculating the wages in order to make the payments. This is the biggest area that they have a problem with. The information that's used, it's not clear. If there's additional information, it has to be addressed by the claims team. If someone is either a seasonal worker or somehow, you know, not a regular worker, definitely have to document all the details of that. They brought up concurrent employment. If someone had 2 jobs, that has to be included in the calculations. And one of the biggest ones is known salary increases. So you work in a union shop and you know that every July 1st, there's a collective bargaining agreement that says there's going to be a raise. We all know what it is. If someone gets hurt on June 1st of that year, you knew they were going to get an increase on July 1st. You need to make sure when July 1st happens that you're considering that wage in what they were doing. Or if you're looking back at an entire year, you can't just use, well, half of the salary is at a lower rate, the rest of the salary is at a higher rate. They really are looking you to say, what is this person missing? What is the wage replacement? So that has to be considered in the address. And so salary continuation, this is more for public entities. If they have a plan, they need it to be a formal plan. Memorandum of understanding is what the MOU is, and that has to be documented and take care of it. What we see them argue, a little bit different than what they find, but what we, the claims people, are finding is they look at those wage statements, and if there's a period of lower or no payments, they want them to be removed or otherwise explained. And so really the documentation of why that was. That person always goes, you know, takes 3 weeks for a ski vacation. So that was time off. That is their regular practice for work. They would take it out of the calculation. If you document what it is, you can actually have that average weekly wage be slightly reduced. The biggest thing, though, is return to work. So several folks have talked about having a really solid return to work modified duty program. What the state is looking at, state of California is doing, is they're coming at the claims administrator and indirectly at the employer and saying, you need to prove that there was no wage loss during that period of modified duty. And it is something that the claims examiner will ask, oh, hey, are you taking it back on modified duty? I am taking back modified duty. Is there going to be any wage loss? No, there isn't. And that's the end of the conversation. That's not good enough for the state. They want to have documentation going back and forth showing that that person did not lose any wages during that period. And they have occasionally found in claims where the injured worker calls back and says, I used to work 50 hours a week, and now on modified duty, they're only having me work 40 hours a week. So I'm losing wages. And that kind of is the thing that they're looking for. Why is it you're doing what you're doing? And are they really getting their pre-injury wages on modified duty? You can go to the next screen. This, I just kind of grabbed. It was a very recent case law update that has to do with utilization review, which, puts some, guardrails around treatment in California. This particular case, Illinois Midwest, basically what had happened is someone had a dispute of medical treatment, and the claims administrator used UR. UR says no. Utilization review said that should not be authorized. And then rather than using the official method to dispute or, question that, which is independent medical review, they just went to the court. They went to the Workers' Comp Appeals Board. Workers' Comp Appeals Board said, oh, claims administrator, you can't do that. This person's been getting this care for years and years, and we don't like that. And so this particular Court of Appeal said, no, you are an independent medical review are the exclusive method for clearing disputes of continuing medical treatment. It is now going to go to the California Supreme Court, and I am hoping, the way it's written, it seems like this will then be codified and it'll be the official rule. And the reason I bring this up is utilization review is one of the best tools that a claims administrator has to kind of control costs. Of the utilization review decisions that say, I'm going to deny or modify this treatment, that go to the independent medical review process, 89% of those decisions are upheld. And the percentage of decisions that actually even go to IMR is probably only 10% also. So utilization review really is the item that controls the care and therefore costs on your claims. So if this really does, stand up to the California Supreme Court, it really is going to say it's going to close the back door, which is to get to the judge, and the judge feels, sorry for someone and then keeps authorizing the care. This is really going to be a good control for all the payers in the system. Thanks, Deborah. If you can jump to the next one. And this item I bring up, California is very amusing, what they do with us. Have you changed for me, Deborah?
It doesn't look like she has. Deborah,
She's not going to. There we go. This has to do with a Know Your Rights notice. I put the dates in this because it is, to me, kind of amusing. So the Labor Commission is in charge of telling employers what posters they should have, in the workplace. A new law took effect January 1st. Well, the Division of Workers' Comp then reaches out to the community on January the 30th and explains that everyone has to have posters up on February the 1st. So this is still kind of getting out there, I think, with that kind of level of communication. But really what this is, it's a whole bunch of, we know we all have these posters up in our workplaces, in our lunchrooms, in break rooms like that. This one kind of crosses over a lot of different pieces. It has wage and hour. It refers to workers' comp. It refers to protections against, unfair immigration related practices. It has an emergency contact rights built into it. There's a lot of stuff with this, and I'm just trying to make sure that everyone kind of knows, all the employers need to know this is something that they have to have up in addition to, the plethora of all the other posters we have. And I did with this put this on both in English and Spanish versions of this. I kind of supplied so we can pass it out to everyone as well. And that's what I had to say about all that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. So I guess, Michelle, do we have time? We have about 10 minutes for
We
questions?
sure do. Let's get to it. So the first question is, do you have cost of a fake workers' comp claim?
Fake, define fake, I guess.
Yeah, we might need more information on that. So I'll circle back with them on that one.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
somebody else wanted to know, do you have any information on nonprofit?
Okay, so say information regarding,
Nonprofit, and I'm assuming it's towards the
Yeah,
beginning of
nonprofits
the,
as if you're a employer in the nonprofit space, as opposed to construction or et cetera.
and and what information do they want for that? I'm sorry, I'm missing every other word at times. Apologize.
oh, okay. So they're just wanting to know if you had information on the nonprofit type of business for the work comp
So
claims portion.
what kind of information, like incident rates, is it maybe?
Okay,
Okay,
we'll have to get
I
more
will,
information on that.
yeah, I don't know what that is. Okay.
Okay, so somebody else asked, what about older employees who have issues or joint issues that have nothing to do with the employer, but because they file a claim, the employer is on the hook? What, do you have a type of cost that would incur?
I suppose that's if they're being aggravated by their work duties. Jim, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, typically you're talking about a pre-existing condition that, may or may not have been aggravated by a work event. And the employer's responsibility and the payer's responsibility is largely to get that person back to their pre-injury state. The difficulty that you have, especially in California and how liberal the rules are, you might not be able to get that. Can you actually get that person if they picked up one more pencil there, they were gonna need a knee replacement. You could find yourself on the hook for those sorts of things. But you really is the documentation of the medical care and really having that communication with your treating physician and utilization review, nurses, all that, with that goal of let's see if we can get this person back to that pre-injury status, which again is not perfect if they had degenerative issues going on.
Right. Thank you for that. So another question is, if an employee reports a mental health concern related to work, are we able to refer them to an EAP in lieu of initiating a workers' comp claim?
I think you
I
could
would
do
think
them.
that would be concurrent.
It's
Yeah,
simultaneous. Yeah, because the EAP is for all employees, regardless of the cause. If they're claiming that psychiatric stress is work related, you need to follow that path. And there's different approaches. The workers' comp really does have kind of boundaries around what is considered a compensable psychiatric claim, that it needs to be more than 50% as a result of workplace actual events, whereas that's not the case, if you're talking about a group health or EAP situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, an EAP is meant to be a helpful resource for employees that could prevent a claim.
Okay.
good point.
Uh,
Good point. Yep.
Yes. And then the next question was, does a leave of absence automatically run concurrently with a workers' comp claim?
For certain rules, yeah, if you're talking about things like the Americans Disability Act, there's certain time frames. I would say yes, days off is days off. If you're talking about the payment of certain benefits, typically no. It would have to be, what is the cost? If it is a non-industrial leave of absence, or it's a workers' comp claim with temporary disability, those things tend not to overlap.
Yeah, so I think what they might be referring to is the FMLA or CFRA in California, the Family Leave Act. And any workers' comp overrides that FMLA. Any workers' compensation leave overrides that.
Okay.
Treated separately.
Okay. The next one is how to prevent the re-injury. How they were adding on to the previous question. How to prevent the re-injury claims. I think, Jim, you were talking about this just a few minutes ago.
I mean, how do you, if someone's talking about having a, an aggravation of a pre-existing condition, and now, how do you keep that from occurring? I mean, it really is, it's the loss control aspect is probably the biggest thing. Look at what are people doing? What is that person's ability? And you really have to kind of look at, are they fit to do that particular work? It's so kind of ergonomic assessment, as as Deborah talked about. It's like those sorts of things are really what you need to do. Make sure that you have a safe work environment.
Gotcha. One last question. How do you handle the short-term replacement staff when they claim the workers' comp? If the assignment is only short-term, how should the return to work policy be created?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
It
And we might need
depends on an awful lot.
Right. So I'll reach out to them to get more clarity. And
Yeah.
then if I didn't get to your questions, there was a couple that I need to circle back with because we just didn't have enough information. So I will be addressing those in a separate email after this. But I want to thank everybody for being with us, and thank you, Deborah, Deb, and Jim, for your expertise. Thank you all for attending today's webinar presented by Heffernan. We will send the information in an email with instructions on how to access a copy of the presentation on our website. We again appreciate the presenters for their time and expertise today. We hope all of the attendees found today's webinar to be a valuable use of your time. Be sure to join us on April 7th for our exempt and non-exempt employees webinar. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thanks all.
Thanks.